love being with black audiences because everybody responds like they're supposed to, especially on a Sunday morning. All right, we still got some people milling in, but I'm so glad that you all joined us today for this amazing conversation with the Kristy Sarah. Welcome, Kristy.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
All right, well, let's go ahead and jump right in. So, you recently reached over 15 million followers on TikTok and 7 million on Instagram. That's a lot of people. You have distinctly different but related presences on each platform. It's like you get a different shade of Kristy on each one. But they're all still related and they all still feel like you. How did you figure out what kind of content best suits your audience for each platform? And how did you approach building your brand in that way?
Well, I feel like the audiences on each platform are so different. Like, I feel like on TikTok, you have a group of people who get a joke, and then you put that same joke on Instagram, and they're like, what is this? Like, what is this
delay
trend?
sometimes, I'll say,
There's
between
such
the
a delay.
TikTok and Instagram.
So I kind of just base it off of my audience, the trends. You know, there's different trends on different platforms. So I just kind of base my videos and where I post it based on where people will get it and where people will relate the most.
I know. I noticed. I love your videos where you're trying on different outfits. Like when you're looking for outfits to go to the Grammys. And seeing you jump around and seeing how you could actually move in each outfit.
You gotta test it, okay?
You gotta test it. You gotta test it. But those are videos that seem like they do well on both platforms.
Yeah. So those, I would say, like, those videos are videos that, you know, I came up with that concept versus like following a trend. And so that's why, like, some of my videos when I post it on these different platforms, it's usually one-to-one, like it's the same, because those are videos that, you know, are original to me. And so I feel like the trends is really what's applicable when posting to different platforms or not posting to different platforms.
How did you figure out? How did you figure out which kind of content suits each platform best? Is there like a moment where you kind of realize that, you know, on TikTok maybe people respond better to family content, or on Instagram people want to see you go shopping? Like, how did you figure out what is best for which platform?
Analyzing the comments. I feel like that's important when you're a creator.
Wait, so comments are like more so than even like the raw data?
Yeah, it's like analytics,
Really?
your comments. Like, you know, some videos people may not vibe with on, like I use the example of TikTok, like they would on Instagram, and I kind of just use the vibe of the comments to determine what I'm gonna post where and when and how, you know? I have a lot of videos that live on TikTok that don't live on Instagram because of the comments. I've like put the same video on Instagram and they're like, what's happening here? And I'm like, yeah, y'all don't get it. So I use the comments as analytics and as a determinant of what I'm gonna post next.
That's such a bespoke approach, as opposed to looking at just like hard data. How many people are watching, or what is the engagement, or how many people are commenting? You're actually looking at the quality of what people are sharing.
Exactly.
And I think that speaks to how you built up a loyal and engaged community with your brand. And I think we all know that that did not happen by accident.
No.
There was a lot of hard work that went into that. What was the point wherein you realized that your online community was also a viable business?
I started posting at the beginning of the pandemic, and it was for fun. You know, I think a lot of us just put videos out there because we were bored. But I think within just a couple of months, I got my first brand deal. And at the time, I was working in IT for a technology company.
Right.
And that one video, mind you, I didn't have anywhere close to the following today. That one video that they were offering to pay me for, I was like, this is 3 weeks worth of work at my current job that I went to school for.
And like IT is some that can be real coin.
Exactly.
And influencing was going to pay you better.
Yeah, and at that moment I said, okay, this is one video, this is one brand, but if I really stay consistent, how can I transform this to be my everyday? And I knew with that one email that came through that brand, and I didn't have any management or representation or anything, I said, okay, I gotta take this seriously. Like this is a world where I can do this full time. And at that moment I was like, let's do it. And I was head first from there.
And I mean, from then on, you're like basically trying to figure out how to scale a business.
Exactly.
How did you even approach thinking about that?
It was hard because I went to school for to work in technology, and my parents both have doctorate degrees, and so education and the job that I had is really important. And so it was really hard to say, hey, I'm gonna quit this and make videos on TikTok. Like, it sounds insane. And so I really just did some research, and there was not a lot of information out there, especially at that time.
Yeah.
And I kind of just took a leap of faith. You know, once I did a couple of brand deals. I said, let me let go from my job for some time and see how this works. If it doesn't work, I'll go back to IT. And I haven't gone back.
And
so.
you haven't gone back, and it's been a few years. Wow, wow, wow. So, okay, you could see that there was value in the work that you were doing. You could see that brands were responding, and they were coming to you. You didn't have to necessarily go out and pitch yourself, right? The demand was there. But even still, even if you know and you're confident in your brand and in your community, I imagine that communicating that value to businesses that want to work with you or partner with you sometimes gets tough. But you've managed to land some really big partnerships, including your most recent one with Verizon.
Yeah.
Walk us through that partnership and any advice that you have for creators on how to navigate those often sensitive conversations about value.
Well, I think what's most important is only working with brands that you are or an organic fan of. And that took some learning too. I mean, I've been doing this for 4 years, and when you're a creator and you first start, you're just really excited to work with anybody.
Right.
And what I've learned really quickly is I only need to work with brands that I actually love and adore, and I learned that very quickly in the process. And I was so excited with my partnership with Verizon because this is something that we've been fans of for years. Me and Desmond have used Verizon for so many years, and I'm like, this only feels right. So communicating your value with these brands, well, first you have to be a fan, you have to love them, and then also just making sure that what they're offering you is worth your time. I mean, that's not just from a monetary standpoint, but just from the creative standpoint too. And so I really do rely on my team as well to help me with that. And they're the experts, and I just kind of trust and make sure that they know what my goals are and kind of take their feedback too.
Wait, so you talk about having your team and how you trust them. I imagine that when you are building a business, trying to find people that you can work with that you can trust is really, really, really important.
Yeah.
How did you go about selecting the people that you work with and evaluating whether or not they were the right fit for you? Because I mean, it seems like it's been working out really well.
Yes.
But as you said, this was new territory for you coming out and starting a business.
Yeah.
How did you figure out the right team for you?
Yeah, it's trial and error. I've lucked out and have worked with amazing people. I don't have any like horror experiences, but it's also just talking to other creators and other people in the space and people behind the scenes as well. And I've learned that, when I first started, I kind of just kept to myself, and I don't think that's beneficial for anything. Like being able to network, at events like this too, and being able to talk and get other people's experiences. Like I've leaned on those conversations to pick my team. And I always tell like other creators, like when you're picking your team, you obviously want to meet with them, but the vibe has to be there. Like statistics are cool, that's important, and what they can do for your business and yourself, but the vibe has to be there. You have to vibe with the team, the energy, you have to obviously get along with them. Like it's so many factors because it is a very personal thing to bring people in on.
Right, I mean, you're based between Texas and Los Angeles, but you're here today in New York, and you got members of your team with you. Like these are people that potentially you're not just collaborating with sometimes. These are going to be people that you're going to be taking flights with.
Exactly.
And people who are going to be accompanying you to different events, and people you're going to be calling at, sometimes
they know all your
hours.
business,
Exactly.
They're like, look, I can't deliver this today. I got XYZ, you're right, it's super personal.
So that trust really has to be there.
It has to be there.
And so, okay, so you also talked about how your team knows your goals. How do you determine what your goals are as a creator? Because I mean, for you, you're not just, as you mentioned, you're not just working with any old brand. You're not just, stepping out there and trying to, simply get paid. You're working with brands that you care about. Sometimes you make content with your family,
Yeah.
and you're bringing your followers really into your life.
Yeah.
How do you determine what your goals are and what's important to you when deciding who to work with and pursue projects with?
Well, when you're posting videos, from the comfort of your home, it's sometimes it's hard to imagine how many people are actually watching. And so the beginning of my process, I'm like, this is my just video diary on my page. Yeah, I see a follower count, but it didn't feel real, especially in the pandemic.
Right, because you're not even really seeing that many people, and let alone you can't
Exactly.
visualize like a room full of people like this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it took some time for me to realize the impact that an influencer or creator can have. And once I realized, no, this is real stuff. You're connecting to millions of people. That's when I kind of just gave myself a pep talk. Like, you have to do what is authentic to you, and the impact if you don't is heavy. And so it takes a lot of responsibility and just realizing everything I post can affect someone positively or negatively. And I don't ever want to promote a brand that, is not organic to me. Yeah.
Those of us who are on TikTok a lot, like myself, I'm a nighttime scroller. Me and my husband get into bed at night, about 30 minutes. We just look at TikToks together. We send each other throughout the day. But those of us who are really on TikTok will remember the conversations from this past summer about fair compensation and representation that creators of color were having on TikTok and across social media this past year. What advice do you have for creators of color? Because I'm looking out in the audience today and I'm seeing a lot of creators of color. What advice do you have for creatives of color in our audience today on how to navigate these barriers? Because it's not always easy.
Yeah. Well, it's like we're asking for someone to value us. That means we need to also value ourselves. And I think it starts there. We need to make sure we value who we are, because that's when we're able to tell someone else, hey, like, this is my value. And I think that comes from saying no a lot. Like, if something doesn't fit with the goals that you have, you need to be able to say no. And saying no sometimes will force people, brands. I mean, this is not even just influencer creator talk, just in general in life. Saying no, you demand the respect and for someone to value you. And if they don't, you move on.
So you have to be unafraid of kind of putting up a boundary, really.
Exactly.
And holding to that.
Right, which is scary sometimes. But I
Yeah.
think it just takes trial and error.
What do you tell yourself in those moments when it gets scary?
I've been there a lot where I've had to say no because I, for example, will know of another partnership with someone else who may look different than me, and they're getting XYZ, and I think it's a vulnerable moment, but being able to stand up for yourself and be like, no, I'm not going to accept that. I think that once you do it once, you kind of rip the Band-Aid. It gets easier every time.
Yeah. And I imagine too that then it also kind of sharpens your focus, and that it kind of creates almost, what's the word I'm thinking of? It creates an even sharper, I imagine, defining line around your brand, because it's like, okay, Kristy is not going to be putting up with just any old stuff.
Yeah. And someone told me once too, someone in this space, they said once you kind of let your barrier down or your boundary down and say yes to something that technically you shouldn't have, it catches wind. Like, other people, other brands, I mean, just in general, like, it may go around and other brands say, well, hey, you did this with XYZ, then, I mean, you should be able to do this for us too. So it's like, it's a domino effect. You think you said yes to one thing and, you kind of let down your standard, but really you're doing even more damage. And I think that could go for anything else in life. If you say yes to something that's, is not right for you,
Right.
it just creates a domino effect, potentially.
So it's like it's not just about like knowing your value as in like understanding your monetary value, what kind of audience you bring, and quality of content you bring to the table. It's also about understanding your values. Oh God, I feel like that's like Oprah. Were you silent or silenced? But it's also about understanding your values and also like, does this line up with who you really want to be and how you want to present yourself in the world?
Exactly, yeah.
Huh.
It's like you set the mold for yourself, and you kind of have to hold yourself accountable to that. And it's personal too. Like, one person, you said no to this person, and this person's like, okay, but to me, it's taking accountability for myself. Like, I owe it to myself to stand up for what I think, is in line with my goals.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, you've been doing this a few years now, and not to say that you fell into this work, because obviously a lot of intention has gone into what you
Yeah.
do, and you've built out a real successful business. But you did start making videos kind of on a whim for fun,
Yeah.
and it's turned into this huge deal. If you had to go back to day one and talk to day one Kristy, what would you say to her about how to approach building this business and building this brand?
You know, I don't know if I would change anything. I'd probably just tell myself, keep going, and I think what's most important is just being consistent. I know everyone says it, but there were times where I took breaks for a few weeks, and I mean, I feel two ways. You should be able to take breaks, but I would probably tell myself, like, at the very beginning process, don't take breaks because it's vital. And when I say don't take breaks, I don't mean like don't give yourself a breather. I just mean be consistent. And don't try something for a week and then fall off of it for 6 months and then try it for another week. You need to give yourself enough time to work towards your goal and put that energy in for it actually to make a difference.
I wonder, what was the video that you posted, or post that you put up, that made you realize, like, okay, I've got to lock in and take this seriously as a business?
So my videos started off being like couples reaction videos, so it's definitely one of those. I know one of the first ones that went viral, I don't know if you guys remember, during the pandemic, there was like a shortage of toilet paper.
I recall.
And so one of my first videos that went viral was Desmond coming home with like 6 jumbo packs of toilet paper. And he just was like balancing them in his hands. And maybe it wasn't 6 jumbo packs, it was like 2, but still, like, it was so much toilet paper that everyone like was like, how did you get all that toilet paper? And so I kind of like used that video as like, okay, people like reaction videos from me, so let me continue to film me naturally messing with Desmond, which I did already before posting. And I just used that as, you kind of, when you're creating, you have to look at what people like from you. Of course, it has to be authentic to you, but I think I would probably just, going back to your original question, just tell myself to pay even more attention than I did, and I do think it, would have carried on the same way. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, so we've gone back in time, given some advice to day one Kristy, but there are some people in the audience today who are quite close to their own day one. What do you say to creators of color who are at the beginning of their journey with content creation?
I think it takes 2 things, and these 2 things, you can't just do one of them. You need to be yourself, be authentic, and then be consistent. I think if you are not yourself, if your content doesn't reflect who you are, and you're just consistent, I don't think it would work that way, and vice versa. If you're yourself, or the other way around, if you're consistent but not yourself, it's not gonna work. You need both ingredients in there to make it work. And so a lot of the times we look up to so many creators. Obviously, we all have the people that we follow, that we love their content. But it's, I think we need to get away from like doing what we see other people doing. We need to do what feels natural to us and what kind of describes us as a person. And then just being consistent, because people resonate with who you are, and that's what makes you different from everyone else that you follow. There's a million people doing this or doing that, but there's only, this is cliche, but there's only one you. And so if you just capitalize on that and post that, and your energy is gonna shine, your just who you are is gonna shine, and people will resonate with that.
Okay, I have a question, and this is a me question. This isn't a question that I had thought about beforehand, but you have this IT background, and there is so much inherent to your work now that involves data and analysis and numbers. How did you kind of merge both of those 2 parts of yourself? Like, and what have you learned from your previous roles that helped you to succeed in this? Because I imagine, I mean, content creation is something that very few people like just naturally just get into the same way that you would go to college and pick a major. There's not currently an influencer major. This is something that you kind of have to create your own path, and that you're usually doing something else first and then bringing over skills from that role into this new role. What skills have helped you to develop along the way?
Yeah, I think sometimes I think about, would I have gone to college if I would have known that this would have been the route? And I absolutely 100% would have still gone to college and still, you know, worked towards the job that I had, because it taught me to be responsible. It taught me how to have good work ethic, and the analytics side of it, like, you know, being in IT and kind of working with the analytics side and just the different things that I did, I kind of transfer that over to what I do now. I treat what I do like a business, you know, and I've learned that from going to college and the role that I had previously. So I will look at my analytics. I'll say, okay, what's working, what's not? And we talked earlier about the different platforms. I do that for every platform. And so, you know, content creation, and so many people who have seen my content, like, I'm this goofy, crazy, chaotic person. And that's me. But behind the scenes, I'm also making sure that I'm digging into the business side of it and being professional behind the scenes. And that's what makes it successful, is having kind of those different outlooks, those different pieces in it.
So it sounds like something that new creators should also be aware of, is like treating it like a business from day one, and just whatever your persona is on you know, to your audience, behind the scenes, it sounds like you also have to be a business person.
You do, yeah.
I got one last question for you. You know, in some ways, you are a veteran at doing what you're doing, because I mean, having years of success as an influencer is rare. But in some ways, you also are, you know, you got so much time left, you got so many places for your career to go. You are somewhat still at the beginning of a greater journey.
Totally.
What do you want your legacy to be?
Well, my main goal when posting is just to make people laugh and be a positive outlet. And so my legacy, I want to just be known for making people happy, giving people a belly laugh, and just kind of being that positive vibe on social media when there's so much negativity out there.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
sharing
you.
your life with all of us, and for sharing with us today, Kristy. This has been amazing.
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining. I mean, I have to say, Kristy, look around. You brought out the audience today, girl. You brought out an audience today. Well, thank you all so much.
Thank you, guys.